Oh, that's good. Who needs a woman? Chin chin, and welcome to another edition of Tales from the Turtleneck. If you enjoy my shambolic shenanigans, please like, subscribe, and flick that little bell. New videos every Thursday. Valentine's. Supposedly an intimate day between you and your significant other. A time for just the two of you, romantically sharing gifts, food, and bodily fluids. However, tonight's tale has a different take on the traditional Valentine's Day offerings. The only thing we shared were arguments, stress, and headaches. Oh, and a time for just the two of us. One of us missed that memo. What is that? Poo sleeve. It was our first Valentine's together. So, wanting to set the bar moderately high, I had booked us a beautiful panoramic room in a modern swanky hotel, with views overlooking the whole of Glasgow city centre. We hadn't had much luck with hotels up to that point. The previous winter we had ventured to Edinburgh for the fabled Christmas market, and booked a room in the very top of a beautiful old snow-covered hotel, only to find the lift was out of order. The novelty of the top floor soon wore off as we began hiking up the mountain of stairs, which was made even more difficult by the gallon of mulled wine we had each drunk beforehand. Nearly at the top. Staggering down them completely hungover was even more fun. Just watch your step. Watch your step. If it wasn't the hotels themselves that we had trouble with, then it was the other people, and I use that term loosely, that were staying in them. A friend of ours had recommended to us a trendy hotel for a weekend getaway. It turns out trendy just means full of old junk and weird art. It was like a car boot sale with a bar. We ended up arriving late to this hotel because I'd been stuck in traffic and kept her waiting at a train station to the wee small hours. We had hurriedly checked in, zoomed up to our room, and collapsed on the bed exhausted. Then we were immediately disturbed by the sound of a monster having a fight with a door. Despite being completely shattered, we weren't getting a wink of sleep, courtesy of Fungus the Bogeyman outside. I went to the door and poked my head out to see a drunken shambles of a woman angrily banging on the security door that separated our corridor from the lift. Not wanting a homicide to dampen our weekend away or another scene, I rang down to reception and explained the situation. My explanation obviously wasn't clear enough, because rather than chucking the rambling lunatic out, they opened the security door and let her in. She then resumed her banging on the door of the room right next to ours. Before I had time to reach for the tranquilizers, my girlfriend was out of the bed and out of the room confronting the beast in the corridor. It's hard to understand shouting and drunken rambling through a wall, but my girlfriend had evidently won, as after she returned, the banging had been reduced to a light knocking. Eventually, the knocking ceased. The door opened, we heard a scream, the smashing of glass, and then deathly silence. I can only assume someone had been bludgeoned to death with the whiskey bottle. Fast forward to Valentine's Day, and the hotel, at least, was a vast improvement. Instead of the contents of your granddad's attic plastered around the walls, this place was tasteful, crisp, and modern. with one wall effectively being a giant window with views for miles. It was only when I noticed the people staring up at me that I remembered that I sleep naked.
That's an exclusive. Unless you've shared a bed with me.
And as I was admiring the view of the city, they were getting an eyeful of their own. I laid back, thinking how it would be impossible to ruin this magical morning. But my girlfriend managed to prove me wrong. She informed me at the 11th hour that we would be spending the day with her friend and a friend of mine on a double date. My girlfriend's friend had been single for as long as we had both known her. She had taken a shining to a friend of mine, but had done absolutely nothing about it. We'd all been at a party a few months before, and my girlfriend had enlisted me to arrange it so that the two of them would accidentally bump into each other or end up dancing together. But, despite our interventions, the two seemed to repel rather than attract each other, so I had written the pair off. Until, in a shocking last-minute turnaround, the two of them, drunk out of their minds, encountered each other at the bar and ended up going home together without any assistance from us.
Unbelievable!
I felt, therefore, our work was done. My girlfriend did not. She felt that we needed to see how they acted sober, and that I was to get intel from my friend on whether he saw a future with hers. Mood killer. The mood was further killed by my stomach, that decided it wanted to eject its contents immediately. I leapt out of bed and went into the shiny wet room, which was glass-fronted too. Unfortunately, the frosted portion of glass that protected your modesty only came up halfway. Being tall, the majority of me was on display as my Valentine watched the world falling out of my arse. To try and reverse this literal shit situation, I said I would text my friend to find out what time he was coming into town and to confirm where to meet. He didn't reply till both of us were showered and dressed, and his text made for grim reading. He informed me he was incredibly hungover, and the night with my girlfriend's friend had been a horrendous mistake he would rather forget.
Ah! So it looks like he isn't coming.
By my girlfriend's reaction, you would have thought she was the one that was being stood up. I suggested telling her friend to cancel and to make an excuse for my friend and to potentially rearrange for another time. This was absolutely out of the question, as she had booked tickets for us all to go to a costume exhibition at a nearby museum. Both my girlfriend and her friend were costume designers, and thought that we would all enjoy it, if only all of us had been included in the decision-making process, with the promise that we would be going to a bar afterwards, and then the two of us would be going out for dinner to the restaurant I had booked. I conceded, and we set off for the museum. I don't recall much of the exhibition itself, as pretty much as soon as we got there, my IBS gremlins came out to play, and I spent a sweaty 10 minutes frantically looking for someone to unlock the disabled toilet door. By the time I emerged, 10 stone lighter, my girlfriend and her friend had seen all they wanted to see and were headed off to the bar across the road. The bar they had chosen wasn't just a standard bar, but a craft beer emporium, and being someone who doesn't drink beer, I was delighted by the menu, apparently asking the barman,
Sorry, do you have any beer that doesn't taste like beer?
Isn't the done thing. Eventually, my girlfriend ordered me a cherry-flavoured beer, which I have to say was delicious, and didn't taste of beer, so I knocked a few of them back on my now empty stomach. My girlfriend's friend then addressed the elephant not in the room and asked where my friend was.
He's had a family illness, and he's had to go and check the family for the symptoms, And does anyone want another one of those cherry beers? Because these are really delicious.
It then turned into a counselling session with my girlfriend's friend telling us how she'd never had a boyfriend and how she was always rejected and that my friend was just another one rejecting her. Then it all became a bit of a blur. It was happy hour in the craft beer place, and so in order to put up with the self-pitying drivel, I had barreled through 2 cherry beers at a time. After 6 or 8, I'd become aware that the conversation had moved on to what she liked in a man. I felt, being a man, I could at last contribute. She said that she didn't mind a tall man or a small man, but being a tall man, I felt I needed to list our perks.
We can reach to the top of the shelves, and then while we're at the top of the shelves, if the light bulb needs doing, we can do the light bulb as well, you see, and potentially paint the ceiling. I mean, there is no end to the perks of being a tall person. I mean, you should see the benefits in concert. And then when you're on our shoulders, you're even taller, so you get a panoramic sort of view.
This then spiralled into me listing the impracticalities of being shorter.
I mean, I guess it'd be perfect boob height, wouldn't you? So you could go in for that. I mean, what about cuddling? I mean, what about cuddling? I mean, what about roller coasters? I mean, you get the idea thing, but cuddling, I mean, you want to be the one cuddled, I mean, you've got little arms coming around you trying to cuddle you, I mean...
As I rambled on, I began to feel a series of sharp pains in my right shin, which seemed to coincide with every time I opened my mouth. Ow! I looked down to see my girlfriend's boots slamming into me and her eyes boring into me.
What?
Ignoring the warning signs, I carried on with my anti-small person crusade until eventually...
Imagine if you dated a really small man, so small that you'd have to have blocks on the pedals of his car. I mean, I don't know if they actually do that, but the point I'm trying to make is...
They do that?
How do you know?
My dad is a dwarf.
Oh. Do you think he'd like this cherry beer? I mean, it really is very nice. I mean, can he drink pints?
I'm not sure how many times my girlfriend apologised. I lost count at 1,000. But despite me insulting her taste in men and her father, and failing badly to cover up my friend standing her up, she still hung around. By our 10th lap of the park, she was still hanging around like a fart in a spacesuit. And even my girlfriend's patience had worn off. So, en route to the restaurant I had booked, we effectively threw her into the train station, pointed out the platform and ran away. As soon as she had gone, my girlfriend agreed that my friend was well shot of her and that she brought her singledom on herself.
I could have told you that this morning. We could still be in bed.
The restaurant I had picked turned out to be quite a walk away, and we were both dehydrated and knackered by the time we got there, as all we had eaten was beer. Valentine's Day wasn't going to let us off that easily, though, and as soon as we arrived, I was informed that they had accidentally double-booked, and we would have to go elsewhere. We staggered around Glasgow like 2 lost homeless people, until we found the only restaurant that wasn't fully booked. We had both ordered the steak, and I think I wept an actual tear of joy as it was placed before us. No sooner had I lifted my steak knife than my girlfriend blurted out
But she felt sick and wanted to go back to the hotel for a lie down.
I plunged my knife into my fillet and imagined it was my heart. Although they claimed they had never been asked before, and they are not an establishment that did takeaways, they did manage to box up our steak dinners, and we made our way back to our hotel. Despite the peppercorn sauce being a little congealed, it still tasted good, albeit cold. We both looked at each other, hoping the other one wasn't expecting anything else that night. Please, no. We both had a headache, and our exhausted eyes said it all. We admitted defeat, laid back, and went to sleep, vowing
Never
to worry about Valentine's Day again. Which we wouldn't have to, as we had split up by the time the next one came around. Nothing says sexy like pizza and braces. I thought she had taken a wrong turn and ended up in Narnia. The moment she turned around, the game was up.